What's up, Pitt fans? Thanks so much for joining us on another edition of the PG Pitt Show. I'm Stephen Thompson. That's Abby Schnable. We write about the Pitt athletics for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We are coming to you from Acrisure Stadium after Pitt moved to 2-0 with a 45-17 victory over Central Michigan. Abby, a dominating win, I guess you could say, in a lot of senses. Pitt covers. They cover a 21.5-point spread, but not exactly the cleanest effort all the way through.
No, it wasn't. Like, they came out hot, and it almost looked like it was going to be a very dominant from start to finish game. Just with the first drive for Pitt, and then the first drive for CMU, just the defense absolutely shutting them down. And then you started to see things get shaky, and it almost continued as the game went on with Eli Holstein throwing that interception at the end. Speaking of Eli Holstein, I mean, great stat line for him, 4 touchdowns, over 400 passing yards. But in my opinion, just he was a big part of why they didn't look particularly great.
Yeah, and I think part of why they didn't look great were all the penalties that they suffered in the first half. So there were 2 in the first quarter, there were 4 in the second quarter, when things really started to get out of hand. It really started with an Abe Ibrahim block in the back. Des Reed pops a big punt return, but instead of starting on the CMU 26, Pitt's backed up to their own 16. And then Eli Holstein throws that interception. Central Michigan cashes in a touchdown there, and then they come back out in the second half. They start the third quarter with another touchdown, and they're able to make a 21-point lead into a 7-point lead almost in the blink of an eye. You can start to feel some of the anxiety creeping in, and Pitt's able to respond really with a significant talent advantage. Poppi Williams is just running wide open. Eli Holstein delivers a beautiful ball for a touchdown that helps everyone settle in. The defense gets back into gear, and everything feels a lot better. But, those, I guess you could call them minor mistakes, are magnified when you're playing a team like this, when you're looking for a good process. So, Pitt wasn't exactly clean all the way through. And, I think maybe the final score belies a little bit of how shaky they looked at certain times, really, in that second quarter.
And it felt like in that second half, after they got that second touchdown to decrease Pitt's gap by just 7 points, that the wind was out of Pitt's sails for a little bit there until the Poppi Williams touchdown. And then it felt like the wind was out of Central Michigan sails. They just looked completely flat. I mean, in the last 5 minutes, Pitt got 2 sacks. Backup quarterback or third string quarterback Mason Heinschel got a touchdown, and it just wasn't the Central Michigan team that we had seen throughout the game. So that definitely padded the score a little bit. But yeah, it just wasn't clean of a game.
Yeah, and sometimes if you're a head coach, and Pat Narduzzi alluded to this, like you kind of like winning by a bunch of points, but also having an excuse to yell at your team about a couple of things. So the penalties they're definitely going to focus in on that this week in practice before they move on to week 3. And Holstein, I think every time we talk to him after he throws an interception, he's thrown 2 this year. He's been very accountable. He knows the mistakes that he made. And he's able to look at the film on the sideline and realize what those mistakes are that he made. And you alluded to it. I mean, another big day for Eli Holstein. He throws 4 touchdown passes for the second straight time this season. He goes over 300 yards. He's spreading the ball around a bunch as well, getting a bunch of pass catchers involved. The interesting thing I think about Holstein is that when he's not at his best, the lows are pretty low. It looks pretty ugly. But then, he comes back and he makes a throw like he did to Poppi Williams. That was a complete seed. Puts that on a rope, a brilliant throw on the run. So I'm wondering, what do you kind of make of Eli Holstein's numbers versus the eye test?
Yeah, I mean, I think his numbers say one thing and the eye test says a completely different. I think if you look at his numbers alone, I mean, he had 17 touchdowns last season total, and he's already at 8. And that's just a huge number right there. The passing numbers wise looks better, but there are some times where it just feels like he doesn't actually know who he's targeting. His scrambles sometimes just don't feel as clean as they should be, and I know that's part of a scramble, but he's not finding the windows he needs as good as we've seen in previous last week, but also last year. And so it just makes it hard to totally buy in on his consistency, because you're seeing in game that he is not consistent. You're seeing him throw really good touchdown passes, but then also throw right to a linebacker. So it's the numbers and the eye test just don't quite match up.
Yeah, and I think the good thing, the positive, is that these mistakes that he's making are fixable. There's clearly not a lack of talent in Eli Holstein. I think we all knew that, but he's still a relatively young guy. I think he's, this is now 12 games into his collegiate career, 12 starts, I guess you could say. So he really has just now put together a full season of work. And so I think we're going to see a lot better decision making from Eli Holstein moving forward. I think he's going to get coached up. And I think just the older he gets, the more experience that he gets. Some of those mistakes, like throwing to a linebacker or throwing, into double coverage in the end zone, making decisions when to run or scramble or not, like he did on a fourth down earlier. He had an opportunity to run maybe for a first down and he didn't. I think those things are going to change. I think you're going to see a different Eli Holstein, in game 8 of this season than you're seeing now. So that's a positive, but also, we're kind of, like we said, the runway into the room for mistakes to be made without much consequence, it's kind of running out a little bit because it starts to get real after this week.
And the benefit for Eli Holstein is that he has so many great targets to throw through. I think we saw that really well today. We also saw it last week as well. I mean, multiple touchdowns, 2 tight ends getting their first touchdowns, Poppi Williams with 2 touchdowns, and then I guess Joel's Goff was a handoff from Mason Heinschel. But there's lots of offensive weapons on this team, which is huge for a team like Pitt, who is trying to come back after the end of last season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we went into this year thinking, okay, Kenny Johnson is your wide receiver 1. That's where people are going to put a lot of their attention in the passing game, but Des Reed is a big part of that too. Every team is going to try their best to limit him as best they can. But, having a guy like Poppi Williams catch 2 touchdowns today in a really explosive manner and really show some improvement in terms of, yards after the catch, that's huge. Blue Hicks emerging as a threat last week. And, having 2 different guys kind of be the star of the passing game 2 weeks in a row, I think is really huge for all those reasons that you listed. Taking some attention away from the guys that we think are superstars is really huge, and it's going to open up a lot of things for this team. And it was pretty stunning. I don't know if I realized it until Eli Holstein said he did not throw a touchdown pass to a tight end last year.
And that's when they had Gavin Bartholomew.
Right. And now he has 2 touchdowns in his first 2 games to a tight end.
3.
2 in 1 game. Oh, 3. Yes, that's right. So he is really making full use of those array of weapons. We've talked a lot about the offense, Abby. Let's go to the defensive side because they were outstanding today.
They were absolutely outstanding. I mean, you think back to Central Michigan is a very run-heavy team. In their opening game against San Jose State, they ran for over 250 yards with 2 guys combining for about or over 200 yards. And Pitt just completely shut that down. I mean, in the first quarter alone, they held them to 7 rushing yards. Yeah. They finished, the Chippewas finished with 40, which is still a huge margin from week 1 to week 2. And that's a credit to the defensive line depth. I mean, I think we saw a lot of players that we didn't necessarily know we would see, not just on the defensive line, but in the backfield too. Everyone was doing their job so well, especially in the first half, that it allowed Pitt to feel comfortable. But we knew the defense was really good, and this just kind of gave you an even bigger example of that this defense can be really good.
Right. Well, I think we knew that the defensive tackle was really good, the linebacker was really good, but we needed to see maybe something from the defensive ends, I think especially. But the emergence of Zach Crothers, a sack and a half today, bunch of tackles. He was living in the backfield, really athletic and twitchy guy. We talked about Joey Zielinski last week. I think he had another really good game. But Isaiah Neal, not someone who I guess I necessarily considered at the top of that defensive tackle depth chart, thought he was really good today. Jimmy Scott getting in the backfield, finally creating some pressure and finishing off some plays was big today too. So there's some more depth there. And without Jaden Moore in there, that's pretty big. We expected big things out of him, but you're seeing other guys in there making plays, which is really huge. And, it's going to be big next week. Pitt being able to shut down the run this week bodes well for next week when they got to face Jaheim White and West Virginia. Speaking of which, we're going to have plenty of coverage next week as Pitt gets ready for the Backyard Brawl. So make sure that you like this video, subscribe to our channel, and stay tuned for all of our coverage throughout the Backyard Brawl week. Next week, on game day Saturday, we're going to have plenty of stuff coming for you guys. So we appreciate you tuning into this video. Make sure you're staying tuned, and we will talk to you next time.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.